personally believe that we've not invented anything. We have tapped samskaras, and we are rebirthing things known from long ago. That's my personal view. Can't prove it, of course. Anything else of a practical nature? Any questions about other classes, further classes, future classes? Hello, Fraccarola.
Hello.
How nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Can I ask you how many people from the areas where you've been holding your classes have actually come into the class?
They don't.
Right.
Chelsea is an enigma. Chelsea is an amazing enigma. Amazing. Amazing. We've run lecture series, pulling in big names and interesting people from all the major faiths. We've widely informed the locality. Maybe 2 turn up. It's our old faithfuls who've come from all over. North, south, east, west. But from Chelsea, no, most strange, most peculiar.
It's all word of mouth, isn't it? It's all recommendation.
But
It could be anywhere.
yeah, it doesn't look unstimulating if you see the list set out. But there's a sickness, of course, in our civilization, in the world psyche, in European society, and not least in London. One of the most interesting questions of all is why do some people relatively grow up and others do not? Some remain children without sophistication. Others gain sophistication, but are still children. Why do some grow up and others do not? It's a very interesting question. Oh well, we might not brood on that tonight. Have we all grown up? In one sense, we hope not, of course. We hope not.
A priest once said to me in a boarding school about a young boy, he hasn't grown up, and I said, why make him? Why force him? Life is a problem enough. You want to rush kids into a sophisticated, mature approach too early. Which is a pity.
One of my favourite Gandhi stories whom I insist on regarding as a very great man. There's a chap called Parekh has written a less complimentary biography of Gandhi. Did you know that, Vinod? Yeah. Which greatly upset Sri Balmukund Parekh, our good friend. he showed me the letter of protest he'd written to Mr. Parrick, from Parrick to Parrick.
He's a professor of politics at college.
Yes, I heard him speak. I heard him speak on Gandhi actually at one time.
What did you think of?
Not a lot. Not a lot. The word of salvation, I feel, is not to be found on the lips of professors of politics. I wish it were. I wish it were as simple as that. Just change the blueprint. We've solved it. No, anyway, the Gandhi story was Gandhi, of course, had quite frequent meetings with the Viceroy and his entourage to discuss matters of mutual concern from differing viewpoints. And Gandhi had this difficult habit of, in the middle of a crucial conversation sometimes, looking at his watch and saying, "Excuse me," and going into a trance, mumbling prayers and things. Time for his appointment with God, the Viceroy would have to wait. Interesting order of priorities. But one day they were having elaborate discussion, and the Viceroy's entourage was horrified because there was disagreement. When Gandhi apparently looked across at the Viceroy, put his hands to his ears, went, this was an infringement of protocol, an unacceptable gesture. But they then discovered that what had happened was that a door had opened at the back, a little beyond the Viceroy. One of Gandhi's grandchildren had appeared. And Grandpa was going, anyway, any other thing of a practical kind, friends, we need to look at? We're fully informed, are we? Adequately briefed. All is digested.
Do you have a contingency plan when your local government funding ceases?
No. We float. Any other points? Could I ask you a question, sir? Does this breathing stuff do your asthma any good?
I think so. Especially this week, in the sense that I haven't had to touch anything, which may be just a coincidence, but it is quite noticeable.
You mean you've managed to keep your hands off the women?
Well, one hand,
That's good.
Yeah, despite, I was just reading a book there, and then Lidley's book was saying that there has been no proof that breathing exercises help
Right.
asthma
Right.
or help to suppress it, but I don't think that's right.
Indar, who was an asthmatic, would not agree with that from experience, and it seems to me, as merely an observer of the mechanics, that it must work. It must.
Plus the fact of being banked down a bit, where the pace here is much easier.
Of course.
It helps as well.
Cool.
But a coincidence, for anybody else's information, Constance's husband, who was a doctor, asked me to hold my breath, just see how long I could do it. And for me, I was beginning to burst after just about 50 seconds, and he said, "You haven't got asthma." He said it's something else, but I'm almost sure it's not that. And that's why I was asking you. I had a feeling at home that I should hold my breath, but not knowing whether I should or not. And so I'm doing it more and more, because he was saying that he had cured one guy by asking him to swim underwater every day for a certain length, of course. And he said that in that he actually helped to cure his problem. So maybe the breath holding is an answer.
I'm sure that's right.
Yeah.
Breath holding is vitally important.
Well, as I asked you last week about that, remember you were talking about this idea, of course, ratios are anathema to you, but you were talking about this idea of when you want to, or when you feel you want to do it. It's necessary. I had that feeling at home, and I just didn't want to until I checked with you. It gradually came to me that I should stop and cease breathing.
You see, what I actually do in practice, we do the prana-pratishtha breathing.
Right.
Preferably, if we're not compelled by the clock to do otherwise, preferably I like to keep that going until the breath pausing has become quite extensive. But you haven't imposed it, you haven't forced it. It has reached that point. And when you reach that point where there is that level of poise between in-breath, out-breath and pausing, and it wants to pause, then you know you can go on to do other breathing exercises, or it can be the start of your posture work. And ideally, that's the way we go. So it's not how many of this one and how many of that one. It's a question of the thing itself determines what is appropriate.
Yes, I'm beginning to sense that myself, because I've been doing more in the last year.
But it's when that starts to operate, it's bordering on the miraculous, I think. And by miraculous I mean lacking ready explanation. How, whatever the condition, that spontaneous breath pausing and the slowing of everything that goes with it, plus the maximization of gas exchange, the way it taps and enhances the innate healing impulse in the organism. And that is all that any therapist with any approach can hope to do. And this is the simplest way, although maybe the most difficult, in the sense that you have to penetrate yourself. And your organism will behave differently in different times. For example, you may start to do pranayama, You may not feel tired, but you start to do a bit of pranayama. And there are times when nature says no. And it stimulates the sleep center in the brain. And what nature is then telling you to do is sleep. Come back to it later. The precise physiological reasons, it would not be easy to uncover. But that's the way it works. It follows its own intelligence. So what I'm saying is, don't force yourself into any kind of breathing. Let it happen when it's ready. Let the innate intelligence in the function be the controller. Any other questions?
Can I ask you to comment on an observation I read in a book by Desmond Dunn on yoga, where he says that the correct way of breathing is to the diaphragm, expanding the diaphragm.
Yeah. Why do you read Desmond Dunn?
Sorry?
Why do you read Desmond Dunn?
You got your answer. He had some useful things to say on other things, but this I wasn't sure.
He goes back a bit, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He goes back to late 40s, early 50s.
62 was this book
Well,
published first.
well, maybe he was still going in the 60s, yeah. But certainly I remember him in the 50s. And he called the system that he evolved yogism,
Uh-huh.
for some reason. Yoga seems to me a perfectly adequate term. Anyway, he called it yogism. And he ran his correspondence courses from, I think, somewhere in New Malden in Surrey. From the same premises, there was another correspondence course operating, and the mechanics were discharged by the same people. You too can have a body like mine. And there was an instance that I knew of two elderly ladies who applied for the yogism course, receiving instruction on how to build big brawny arms, a mighty back, and legs like pillars of oak. Anyway, now, Desmond Dunn uttered a truth when he said that. And that is the first level of truth in the matter. In as much as the opposite, shallow, upper chest, puffing away, is positively dangerous and is rooted, is linked with goodness knows how many psychosomatically associated illnesses. And what illness has not some psychosomatic component? And what ailing state might not be improved by taking into consideration fundamental things like diet, the purity of what you eat, like the air you breathe, and the way you breathe. But we take it a little further into maximum gas exchange. Physiotherapy, top physiotherapists at the present time have gone into this breathing thing quite a bit. Flogging, rightly, it's not wrongly, the diaphragmatic breathing theme. And at Bart's Hospital, they've measured and experimented and charted and reached scientifically validated conclusions, which are very interesting. And the recovery rate of people suffering, say from agoraphobia, is greatly accelerated by doing breathing retraining. And that much is well authenticated. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that asthma comes into that category, but it won't be shifted mainly just by diaphragmatic breathing. You've got to look a bit further. Where they go wrong, it's not wrong, but not right, where they miss the point, is when they do the diaphragmatic breathing, they put the subject on their back and they tell them to breathe diaphragmatically. So the inflation of the lower lung comes against gravity. Now, if they did the reverse, if they trained them to breathe on all fours, they'd hardly need to train them, because gravity itself would conduce to that individual breathing automatically like every other mammal that moves around on all fours. And gravity would tend to pull the tummy out. So you'd have a great advantage there, rather than doing it on your back. And indeed, if we could walk around much more on all fours, or do things on all fours, unconsciously relating much more closely to the earth, we'd be exerting a natural and inbuilt corrective. And where our troubles arise is when we have the erect backbone for reasons that are a puzzle. Why has nature devised a structure for humankind so inefficient as the erect backbone, without adequately compensating for the fact our weight is carried only on two limbs, with goodness knows how much knee trouble in consequence, and back trouble, because the adjustment the human race does not find easy. But that's another story. I'm sure there is a reason, but it's another story. The thing is that a technique such as Magariasana would be better.
Will that achieve the same thing?
Carrying Magariasana to the degree that we do, it would achieve better. But that's the first thing. The second thing is this. They're very concerned that you should inflate the diaphragm for obvious reasons. So they say breathe in and open that. They put the burden of the awareness on the in-breath. They should be doing the opposite. They should put the burden of the awareness and the action on the out-breath, on the letting go. Develop the practice of a really effective out-breath that you can hear against slight resistance at the glottis. and really expel, and by reflex you would then be doing what you should be doing all the time.
Yes, Desmond Dunn is ambiguous on that. Yeah.
Yes, you'd be operating a reflex, which would tend to need to expand and would begin to expand there.
Mhm.
And this is one of the reasons why in our breathing we do a 3-stage or a 4-stage in-breath. Why it involves, as you fill the lung, leaning forward. Then you get something like a complete breath. Then you're really going places. But you can't tell these top physiotherapists. It'd be better if you started by teaching people to breathe out rather than breathe in. Then the in-breath would correct itself. Their reputation hinges on the contributions they've made to the learned journals on this subject. But I'm sure much, much more could be achieved. But we need to look a lot further than diaphragmatic breathing. And especially where diaphragmatic breathing is made to operate with the conscious mind concerned primarily with enhancing the in-breath. Get the out-breath right and the rest will come easy.
And how soon, it's one thing to do these breathing exercises. How long before it begins to affect one's breathing, the rest of the day?
Well, I only know this little story. There's a lady who's acquainted with some of our techniques. And she is teaching in a psychiatric hospital. Now, I wouldn't say she has the most comprehensive grasp of our techniques. But the work she's been able to do has impressed the medics. And they've taken measurements and they've reached the conclusion that just what she's been able to do has resulted in the patient's breathing better, being more alert and alive for the rest of the day, and sleeping better at night, and therefore not needing tranquilization. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Now that's not taking it very far. Our hubby's been coming along to one of our classes and then genning up his missus, and she's trotted off to the hospital.
Right.
And the medics are writing it up. Great profundity. Anything else, friends? Any other question of a practical kind? Let us tie up the odds and ends tonight.
If there's no one else, can I ask another question then?
So, yes.
I was listening to your tape on meditation, where you make the point that the techniques are there only to predispose the person, and thereafter they can transcend the techniques of meditation. But what are those techniques?
Doesn't it sound the tape?
No.
Oh, you got the wrong tape.
That's the one on inflow of meditation and inflow. breath.
Yes, I'm not responsible for the titles on the labels, actually.
Well, I can help you identify which one is the
Yeah. We approach meditation, as you've gathered, I imagine, through the breath, not through visualization, not particularly through dharan. But when the state of equipoise has happened, then meditation is not only predisposing, but has happened. It's there, you're there. All you have to do is let the chattering head subside, and you will be aware of it.
Yes, how do you let it subside?
You just drop it.
Sorry?
You just drop it.
I think I know what he's getting at. There are techniques that do help the chatter stop, and then you can drop it easier. Is that right, Neil?
Well, I mean, I don't know what those are, but that's what I've heard. I mean, are there some aids so that you can still the mind?
I've heard there are. But if you're really watching the breath, it will happen. And that is closer to a natural thing. I'm not happy about making pictures. Visualization. I think mantra has some place, but you need to let go of mantra. The point about mantra is that you bring the thought energy together at one point, then you can conveniently drop that one point. From our approach, we can get all the focus we need by tuning in to our own most fundamental mechanism, which is our own breathing.
Would you incorporate that with following the breath to the heart?
Yes, yes. But just tune in to what's happening, or should be happening. On the out-breath, you are letting go, and you are letting go of you, which means the head is letting go of itself. And become aware of your deeper being, which is focused here. But then you let go of that also, so there is no center. And where are you when there's no center? Paradox. Any other points, friends? One of the most effective things is if we're making a concession to technique. And I would wish to minimize technique, because it's all clutter that we have to let drop at some stage. To me, techniques are justified therapeutically if there is a state of dis-ease that can be helped by utilizing some technique, just as it might be helped by utilizing some herb, then use it. But the sooner you can stop taking stuff from the bottle, the sooner you can stop using the technique, the better. Now, Ramana Maharishi, who I believe to be the greatest being this century has manifested, had the most simple form of meditation. With two approaches. One was merely watching the breath. As the breath diminished and virtually faded away, so did thought. And what remained, if you were aware, was the glorious revelation of your true state. Or the alternative, often for the more intellectual sort of person, is to pose a simple question. Who am I? Now you've made an act of thought. Who am I? You then pause and wait. You wait for the response. And you wait not with the head waits upon and listens to the heart. The answer you seek from the heart. That's all.
You mentioned something about focus on the chest, and then you
Yes.
drop it. I don't quite understand what that means. Does the breath focus on the chest?
You're aware of your breathing diminishing, becoming minimal, and as you, as it were, let go of your own laboured breath state, so your thought process likewise diminishes. And the breathing is, of course, centred there, arises from there, returns to there. And probably spontaneously, the energy of your awareness will go there, or should. Let it rest there. Let the head descend to there. Become your heart. The seat of Atman. Any other points from it? All is clear.
What the breathing has made me feel is that I would like to do more pranava. That's what it's made me feel.
Pranava.
I'd like to. But you're not really doing that much at the moment. Or here, let's say. Is there any? It's not the sort of thing you can do very readily at home because the neighbours wonder what's going on. You have to really let go, sort of thing.
On that point, you know, you talk about silent prayer. What about silent pranava? Would that be in any way effective? Or has it to be audible, or has it to be sounded out?
The official view is that the more it's interiorized, the better. I personally take the opposite view, that for it to be audialized means it's a holistic experience, and the body is aware of the vibration as well as everything else. Anything else, friends?
Yes. A question about the alternate breathing. You breathe through one
Yes.
nostril first and then the other one. What is the purpose of this exercise?
You have to find out. You have to discover. You have to experience. The official explanation, Nadi Sodana, you are thereby cleansing the nadis. The nadis, allegedly, are the channels of the subtle anatomy through which the life force flows or does not flow as it should if it's blocked with impurities. There are various techniques alleged to cleanse the nadis and enable the pran to flow fully. These techniques are called kriyas. Nadi Sadan is one of the kriyas. By using one nostril only, there is a sense of stronger focus, one side, and then the other side. And allegedly, that enables you to sense your subtle anatomy, your Pingala Nadi and your Ida Nadi, each of which terminate at your snitch. But do it and see what happens. It's calming, it's stabilizing, it's balancing. As we do it, it goes some way towards maximizing gas exchange. It's also vitalizing in a subtle way, but one has to experience this. Any other questions, friends? As Father Lane said, we always go for the big questions.
What is the reason again, Alan, when you do, say, one of the in-breaths and you start rotating clockwise to yourself?
It just happens.
Just happens.
Don't make it happen. If it wants to do it, let it flow.
What is the most valuable, practical thing we could be doing?
Well, it's not exactly the same for each individual, is it? But everything stems from our breathing. And meditation with the breath will take you anywhere. And will cause you to know whatever needs to be known.
Elaborate on that.
If the relationship between your breath and your brain, between your awareness and the fundamental mechanics of your psychophysical structure undergoes a fundamental alteration, everything will alter from the source. And you'll be enriched in this sense. You will become stronger physically, greater in stability, but you will also become more and more sensitive. Approached in this way, you will have the strength to become sensitive. And what you need to know will happen because you are sensitive to what you already know and or to what, shall we say, may be in the atmosphere. I'm personally convinced that if you are adept at pranayama, and there are things you need to know. If you look at a text, the meaning between the lines will also be cognized. And you may well find that is verified by appropriate, authentic, expert testimony at some subsequent stage. What you need to know, you will know.
Which is insight, is it? More insightful.
Yeah.
So if there's a serious change in the relationship, now under what circumstances that comes about?
It happens. Anywhere, anytime, you are aware of that alteration. And if we have any degree of sensitivity, if we are allowing our awareness to flow, anyone can pick up that in a room, maybe at all sorts of occasions, improbable occasions, sometimes, energy changes. Intelligence is in the atmosphere. Inspiration is in the atmosphere. Whether you personalize that as some specific presence or not is really immaterial. Wisdom flows in the atmosphere. Inspiration, healing, guidance, knowledge, it's all there. And a benign coming can be cognized anywhere, anytime. And it's one of the spontaneous fruits of your personal regeneration, which arises when the head no longer artificially dominates. Deeper levels function.
And you said at least can lead to instability.
We've concentrated a lot on ways of countering instability.
Sorry, I'm not okay.
You haven't observed us doing that this week? With all our working with the hara?
Yeah.
Stability and strength. Let it happen. Just let it happen. Let's have a bit of bark, Keith. Then a cup of tea.